Hi, campers and other friends. My name is Shannon, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. You may be wondering why we're going to talk about journalism at Girls Rock Camp. And the first reason is personal. I am a journalist, and music is one of the things that led me to study journalism. When I was growing up, I loved to read and write and listen to and play music. When I went to high school, one of my teachers suggested that I could use those things I loved to build a career in journalism. So I joined my high school newspaper, and when I went to college, I studied journalism and wrote for my college newspaper. When I graduated, I went to work at the Dallas Observer, and now I work at the Dallas Morning News. At the beginning of my career, I did write about music. I would go to concerts and review them, and listen to albums and write about them. But my favorite things were to interview musicians and tell their stories. I loved to talk to them about their influences, what inspired them, the stories behind their song lyrics, what they were trying to say with their music. I really enjoyed telling the stories of these folks. The other reason we're talking about journalism today is that journalism and Girls Rock have some things in common. Both want to amplify the voices of people who are often not listened to. Both want to support the community and all the people in it, and both are working towards making the world a more just and fair place for the people who are a part of it. Now, Girls Rock does this through camp and other programs where everyone is invited to come and be themselves, be accepted for who they are, and express themselves however they want to. And journalism does this by telling the stories of people in the community and having those stories published in print and online. Both also value diversity, but we all have a lot of work to do when it comes to diversity. That said, there are many women, people of color, and other marginalized folks who have done a lot of work in journalism to get us to the point where we are now. Years ago, someone who looked like me would not be working at a newspaper, and newsrooms are vastly different than they used to be, but we still have a lot of work to do. But first, I want to introduce you to some of the people who broke the barriers, opened the doors, and made the way for people like me to be in a newsroom. And then after we talk about them, we're going to write a short news story together. First, I'd like to talk about some Black journalists. On your left is Ida B. Wells. She was born a slave, freed as a child, and went on to be a journalist. She was known for writing about racial injustice and being a voice for the voiceless. On the top is Alice Allison Dunnigan. She was the first Black White House correspondent, which means that she covered the president. Because it was the 1940s, she did not have the privileges that her white colleagues did. And it is said that her questions on race were so tough that the presidents would not call on her to ask them. It wasn't until the 1960s, when John F. Kennedy was in office, that she was regularly called on to ask her questions. Beneath her is Rachel Scott. And just recently, she became a White House correspondent herself, following in the footsteps of Alice Allison Dunnigan. Next, we have a few Latina journalists. Sonia Nazario and Liz Balmaceda are both newspaper reporters who won Pulitzer Prizes for their excellent work. Pulitzer Prizes are among the highest recognition a journalist can receive. Then there's Maria Elena Salinas, and she was the first Latina journalist to win a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Emmys. Here's Cheryl Wudunn. She was the first Asian American reporter to win a Pulitzer Prize. And on the right is Connie Chung. She's known as a television reporter now, but here's a picture of her in her early career. If you look closely, she's the only woman and the only person of color. And I love that this tweet is from a current journalist who's Asian American, finding inspiration in the photo. Rebecca Nagle is one of many Native American and Indigenous journalists. Earlier this month, when the Supreme Court decided that much of Oklahoma was to be tribal lands, some national news organizations started covering this story. But if you look at the tweet on the left, Rebecca Nagle has been covering the same story since 2018 when the lawsuit was first filed. And this happens a lot. When people are covering their communities, the stories don't get noticed until the national press finds out about it. Trans people are not new to journalism, but last month the Trans Journalists Association debuted to promote trans journalists in their work, help newsrooms cover trans issues, and help newsrooms be more trans-friendly. It's important for trans people to cover trans issues because they have insight that other journalists don't, but it's also important that trans journalists have opportunities to write about other subjects that they're passionate about, such as music, or food, or politics, such as Caitlin Burns from Vox. Also debuting this summer is The 19th, a news website designed for women and produced by women journalists. The 19th takes its name from the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. This year is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. This is also an election year, which means that the 19th news website will be covering the election issues from a women's perspective. I hope you've enjoyed learning about these journalists. It's important to have journalists who reflect the communities they represent in order to tell everyone's stories, whether they're Black, gay, disabled, trans, Muslim, Asian, Latina, because everyone's voice needs to be heard and everyone's story needs to be told. Now let's work together to write a quick news story. A basic news story answers a series of questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now let's use Girls Rock Camp as an example to write our story. So who? Sam is going to their first Girls Rock Camp. What? At camp, Sam will learn an instrument, meet other campers, join a band, write a song, and watch workshops and performances. When? July 6th through July 31st. Where? Online this year. Why? Sam wants to express themselves creatively, but doesn't know much about music and wants a supportive place to learn. How? Girls Rock Camp empowers girls, trans, and gender-expansive youth through music education, providing opportunities to learn and express their music creativity. A journalist named Chip Scanlon, who coaches other reporters, likes to throw in a few more questions. Why does it matter? What's the point? What does it say about our lives, world, or times? Why now? And then sum it all up in one word. So why does it matter? Folks need places where they can learn and grow. What's the point? Sam gets music education and support from camp. What does it say about our lives, world, or time? This year has been difficult, but folks can help each other and find self-care in expressing themselves. Why now? In-person camp was moved online and people are finding ways to come together virtually. Then sum it up in one word: inspirational. Now, journalists get their information by interviewing sources, and they often put quotes in their stories. I love quotes because it allows people to tell their story in their own words. Now let's put it all together for one final story. Sam wants to be a pop star like Billie Eilish when they grow up. Sam loves listening to music on Spotify and writing poetry and lyrics in their journal, but they don't know what to do next to work towards their dream. Then Sam's family found Girls Rock Dallas's first online summer camp. Aspiring musicians ages 8 to 17 can learn an instrument during weekly lessons and write a song with other campers during band practices. There are also workshops on music topics such as songwriting and recording, and other things like expressing yourself through dance and visual art and being a good friend and ally. Like many other students, this year's been rough for Sam. with being away from their friends at school and missing the fun things they like to do during the summer. Girls Rock Camp has not only been fun for Sam, but they now have a toolkit of ways to express themselves. I learned how to make poems into song lyrics and sing them to a melody, Sam says. Working with other singers and the musicians in my band showed me that while everyone is nervous, it's important to try because we all have something meaningful to say. So now we've written a quick news story using the simple questions that we learned. I find that those questions also help me when I'm writing fiction stories. If I need help with a plot or a character, asking those questions will help me get back on track. I also think they'd be helpful in writing a movie script or a TV script. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about journalism today, and maybe you'll think about pursuing it in the future. We need people like you in journalism. Everyone's story deserves to be told.